Look at this light. Look at the sundown. Today is Sweden's, we call it Midsummer Day. Look how beautiful the city is. So it's called Midsummer Day, and I think it's when the sun is the highest, and it's like the peak of summer, and from now the days will only be shorter. That's it. I think it's the longest day of the year. That's what it is. And in Sweden, it's really traditional to always celebrate on the eves. So we celebrate on Christmas Eve and not Christmas Day, but we still say that the 25th is the Christmas day, but we celebrate Christmas on the 24th. And the big celebration was yesterday, and no one really... well, maybe people celebrate the day before so that we can experience the longest day, doing whatever we want. I spent it reading. I just finished The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, and I liked it. I feel like it was an easy read, I feel like. And I read it in Swedish, and I was a bit frustrated because there were a couple of typos that were frustrating, but maybe that's just the copy, and other copies would have fixed these. But the story, because that's what's important, I guess the story is really interesting. I feel like it even says it in the book, something about knowing things, but you don't acknowledge them before you've learned them or someone teaches you them. Some things are just innate that you know, and I feel like a lot of the things in this book I know, but reading it explicitly made me realize, also not always explicitly, I feel like, and that's partly why I want to record this video, is because I feel like this would be a book that I could reread in a year, and it would mean something not completely different, but I would probably have a different interpretation of it. One paragraph or one section, a chapter, I guess, that really stuck with me was when, this is obviously a huge spoiler alert, so only watch this or keep watching if you've read the book. I think my favorite chapter was when he met Fatima, and she said that, I'm trying to translate it because I read it in Swedish, I'm trying to translate what they said. And she said something like she's a woman of the desert, and that she knows how to wait, and that she wants Santiago, the boy, to fulfill his destiny, and that she will wait for him. And then in the end, I think it's really beautiful how the wind, how she, in like the middle or a third, 3/4 in of the book, she asks the wind to bring her kiss to him, and at the end it does. And I just think it's beautiful. So the part about love is my favorite thing about this book. Santiago and Fatima, I relate to a lot of the things that were written there, and I think it's beautiful. I don't think I agree entirely with the section of love that when he was talking to the wind, I think, about what love is. No, to the desert, about what love is, that the love is the falcon and the prey and all that stuff. I don't think that's... In a way, I want to say that I understand it, and I want to say that love is everything and everywhere, but that's a section or a part that I feel like if I reread this, I might understand better in a couple of months. Like if I reread this in a year, then maybe I have a different interpretation. And I guess you could say that with a lot of books, but this book really is just about following your dreams and your destiny. I'm still a bit confused about the ending, or maybe I shouldn't be, but he makes it to Egypt, and then one of like the thieves or barbarians or whatever they're called in English, after beating him up, his peers beat him up, and then he says stop, he doesn't have any more belongings, and then he told him about his dream back in Andalusia, where Santiago is from. So he then returns to Andalusia, and that's where the actual treasure is. So I feel like the timeline is that the treasure was where he was all along, but he had to do this big trip in order to find the treasure. And on the way, he learned so much about everything. He learned how to speak the language of the universe and to do all of these amazing things, and especially to listen to his heart. And he met Fatima. So yeah, there were definitely a couple of excerpts from this that I really appreciated, and I do appreciate the story a lot. So I think I'm gonna give this a 4 out of 5, maybe a 3.5. I only spent today and yesterday to read it, and maybe this is a book that gets better with time, but I did appreciate it, and that might be a harsh rating, but it wasn't a 5 out of 5. But I did appreciate, okay, let's see. I appreciated the world building and the feelings that it awoke in me. The boy, I feel like his interactions with the alchemist sometimes were a bit repetitive, and maybe that's something that, but I still don't know how you would change it. So I think a 4 is accurate. And either way, it's not about the number of stars, but what you take away from the book. Like I said, I feel like I already knew a lot of things in this, but just reading it made me think about it more. There was another part that I liked about this whole him wanting, Santiago, that is, wanting to experience the world and travel and meet new people and not have to spend time with them always, because then they would eventually want to have a say in how he should live his life. And then the book says that people always seem to want to control how people, or have a say in how people live their lives, but they themselves seldom know how to live theirs. And I feel like that was true. I also feel like the part when he talks about the heart, and that the heart, I actually really like the part when Santiago was talking to his heart, and the heart said that it can't help but be nervous because it's a heart in a human body, and that's what humans' hearts do whenever they're close to fulfilling their destiny, or being afraid that love or joy, love or happiness, whatever it was, will be long gone, and just kind of this anxiety and fear that the heart is feeling. And I did like all the symbols in the book as well. I feel like I'm talking like this, processing the book makes me realize more about the book. So this isn't, I just finished it. This isn't scripted at all. It's just my thoughts about the book. But I did really like the symbols in the book. I like the symbol and all of the kind of giving souls and destinies to everything, even inanimate objects. The wind, the desert, the sky, the sun. I also like the part, I'm not religious in the sense that, I think that sums it up. I'm not religious. I'm not quite sure what I believe. I'm not an atheist, but I'm not religious because I don't feel like the interpretation of life or of this God of different religions, I don't feel like that's something I'm especially drawn to. I don't believe in reincarnation necessarily, or Jesus Christ, that he lived and died for our sins, or any other religion. I feel like religions are all just interpretations of something. But the book also says, when they're on the caravan, that the leader of the caravan, his God is Allah, but he wants all of the people of the caravan to pray to whichever God they believe in. I think that's such a beautiful thing, because even though I'm not religious, I've seen how it speaks to other people, and I understand, and I sometimes envy the comfort that it can bring to people, kind of like Santiago talking to his heart, and how that makes him feel less worried. People could often, I guess, who are religious, who has this belief and trust in a God, could put their faith, their anxiety, their fear in God's hands, and then probably feel a lot more at ease. And I feel like that's not something that I necessarily have in my life. And maybe that's what the part of Santiago talking to his heart, maybe that's what that was. It's kind of finding God within yourself. And I think there was also a line in this book where in the chapter where Santiago, when after speaking to the desert and to the wind and to, I'm not sure if I followed, I don't think he spoke to God himself, but it says here, it's in Swedish. I'll read you it in Swedish because maybe that's interesting. Pojken nådde världssjälen och han såg att den var en del av Guds själ. Och han såg att Guds själ var hans egen själ. Och att han, en pojke, kunde utföra underverk. Roughly translated, the boy reached the world's soul, the soul of the world, and he saw that it was a part of God's soul, and he saw that God's soul was his own soul, and that he, a boy, could perform miracles. And I just feel like that's beautiful, because I feel like, again, like I said, I'm not religious, but the romanticization and kind of poetry of a god is really beautiful to me. And I feel like the word God to me doesn't necessarily mean a creator. I feel like God to me carries some weight in a way, and I'm not sure if I could even explain it in words, but I feel like people carry this divine ability, and I feel like we all carry God within us in a way. And I think most people could agree, kind of regardless of your religious beliefs. Of course, atheists wouldn't really believe, but it has to do with what meaning you assign to the word God. To me, if God is happiness and love, then that's very much true that I want to carry, and that I do carry God within myself, because I do carry happiness, I do carry love for myself, for others, within myself. And I feel like that's something really beautiful that this book now has made me, again, even if that's something that I already knew, reading it and telling you about it made me again realize and be more open to it. So maybe this book absolutely is a 4. It could even be a 5, just because it makes me think about these things. There was something else that I thought about regarding religion. It was this whole, like I just said, the romantic and poetic figure or symbol that is God. I feel like, even though, again, I'm not religious, so when I write poems, if I were ever to write about God, then that's not, to me, that's not Jesus Christ, or that's not Allah, and that's not any of the Hindu gods like Krishna. I'm not well read on Hindu gods. Ganesha maybe is another one. And it's not the Norse gods, it's not the Christian god, it's not the Judaistic god, it's not the Islamic god, it's not the Hindu god. I feel like Buddhism doesn't really have a god, so I can't say that. It's not any of the Greek gods, any of the Roman gods. It's, to me, it's just love. and I think that's something that's really beautiful about this book, is that it's filled with symbolism. It's not at all literal. The symbols are not supposed to be literal. It's super poetic the way that he writes something about not having to worry because everything is written by the same hand. That, of course, is something that a religious person said, and he was pointing to God's hand. But it's so beautiful and so poetic. And in a way, it does bring me comfort. And I guess that I'm happy and to be naive and maybe agnostic to walk around and think that I shouldn't worry because there's a plan, or I have a destiny, or whatever. And I feel like this book, in a way, even though we meet a lot of religious characters and the main character is also religious, I feel like I really benefited from this book, and I feel like this book spoke to me in a way, and I could see the symbolism and not just say that, no, I'm not religious. I'm not going to believe that. So I really appreciate about the book. It also makes you wonder if the king that he met was also the alchemist. I'm not quite sure. I see that this video is now 19 minutes, so I think I'm going to round it off. I feel like 20 minutes is pretty good rant. But this was my book review of The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I think that's how you pronounce his last name in Portuguese. I asked my dad yesterday, who speaks a bit of Portuguese. I can't say that he speaks Portuguese if this is not how you pronounce it, but I feel like it could be. I enjoyed it, and you should definitely read it. I shouldn't tell you this now, because then I've already spoiled everything. But if you're one of those people that read the last page first and you're happy with that and you don't mind spoilers, then I feel like even though I just spoiled a lot of the important things that were important to me, I feel like, and basically the whole plot and the ending, if you haven't read it, I still think that you should, because it makes you think about these different really relevant themes in your life, about your destiny, about your dreams, about what's important, and kind of trusting your gut. And I just realized there was this whole other theme throughout the book about signs. And I'm not quite sure how I feel about that, because I always interpreted these signs as trusting your gut. So again, not quite literal, but a symbol, because I do feel like I can trust my gut. And in some way throughout my life, I've calibrated what's important to me and kind of have a pattern recognition of people's behaviors and situations, so that I just realized another thing that I read in the book that was super interesting. The part where he with the heart, that he said that he was excited and pleaded the heart to be anxious whenever it sensed danger. I feel like that's such an important part of life. Always, also to not always be content and at ease, but to trust your heart and to give it the freedom to roam in life and to tell you whenever something's not right. And I feel like that's the heart, and the signs, kind of the more literal way to interpret it, is trusting your gut. And I like that, because reading it gave you a lot of reminders again, like when he was robbed from the first guy. I feel like when I'm out traveling, I always have my guard up, not super high, because I feel like I want to meet new people and I don't want to judge people. But as soon as I sense that something is a little bit wrong, I feel like my gut tells me to be a bit more aware. And I feel like that was something that this book also raises, this kind of intuition. Man, that's a good book. I feel like my sister and I, we were talking about, she's a bit not mad or frustrated, but she's like, we were supposed to have a book club about this, but I started yesterday and I just kept reading, and now I finished reading it. But I feel like this is kind of what I'll bring to the book club with her, or the book circle, to talk about the book, because I feel like it's beautiful and I'm so happy to see how she interprets this. Okay. The sun has now set behind the clouds, and maybe the sky will turn a beautiful red, but I'll see you in the next one. I wonder what book I will read next. We'll see. Bye.